February 4th, 2022 marks the 100th anniversary of Ford's purchase of Lincoln from founder Henry Leland, who, ironically, helped create Cadillac from the remains of Henry Ford's second car company. The Ford Motor Company we know and love was Henry's third try. Though Lincoln has often yielded the limelight to domestic rival Cadillac, not to mention later European and Japanese competitors, the brand has produced some truly outstanding cars. Here, in chronological order, are the 10 best Lincoln vehicles in the brand's 100-year history. Number 1. 1936 Lincoln Zephyr. Zephyr was originally conceived as a lower-priced sub-brand of Lincoln, similar to Cadillac's LaSalle. Instead, the Lincoln Zephyr was a surprise hit that became the mainstay of the Lincoln brand. By the standards of the time, the Lincoln Zephyr was a modern car with unit body construction, Ford's first, a compact 4.4-liter V12 engine, and a bold aerodynamic styling, a brave move on Lincoln's part, as the streamlined Chrysler Airflow of 1934 was a flop. America was still in the midst of the Great Depression, and the smaller, more austere Lincoln Zephyr was a sensible alternative to Lincoln's high-end Model K. In its first year, the Lincoln Zephyr accounted for some 80% of Lincoln's sales. After World War II, the car lost its Zephyr surname and became the pillar of the Lincoln lineup through 1948. Number 2. 1956 Continental Mark II. In the 1950s, Ford set out to build the finest personal luxury car in the world, and this was the result. The 1956 Continental Mark II, a follow-on to the Edsel Ford-inspired Lincoln Continental of 1940. First revealed to the public in Paris, the 1956 Mark II eschewed the gaudy fins and excessive chrome for which American cars were known, instead exuding an understated elegance that was truly European, or as Lincoln would prefer to call it, continental. Marketed under the standalone Continental brand and sold through Lincoln dealerships, the Mark II was largely hand-built, featuring imported Scottish leather upholstery, a multi-coat hand-rubbed lacquer finish, and every creature comfort Ford could conceive, with air conditioning as its only option. The Mark II was priced at $9,960, about $102,000 in 2022 dollars, making it nearly as expensive as a Rolls-Royce, though its labor-intensive assembly process meant that Ford reportedly lost $1,000 on each Mark II it sold. Just over 3,000 were built in a 2-year run, with owners including Frank Sinatra, Dwight Eisenhower, Elvis Presley, and Nelson Rockefeller. Number 3. 1961 Lincoln Continental. After 3 years of horrendously gaudy cars, see our list of the worst Lincolns ever made, Lincoln produced one of the most beautiful and iconic luxury cars in history, the 1961 Continental. With its long, low squared-off and D-chrome styling, the 1961 Continental turned its back on every 1950s styling cliché, instantly making its arch-rival Cadillac look like a relic from the past. Lincoln offered the 1961 Continental in both 4-door sedan and 4-door convertible versions, both featuring rear-hanged suicide back doors. With the stylish Kennedy sweeping into the White House, America was seeing a radical change in design and style, and it seemed fitting that the fashionable young First Family had a new 61 Lincoln as their presidential limousine. That car would play a tragic role in our nation's history, but like Jackie O herself, the Continental would survive that tragedy and become an icon of early 1960s style. Number 4. 1968 Lincoln Mark III. We hesitated to put the Mark III on this list as it was the grand marshal of Lincoln's decade-and-a-half-long parade of rolling waterbeds, but in business terms, it was a massive success. Lincoln Mercury was a pool of red ink, so Lee Iacocca, then executive VP of Ford's Car and Truck Group, directed his designers to put a Rolls-Royce grille on a Thunderbird and develop a personal luxury car on the cheap. Lincoln's long-term goal was to overtake the Cadillac Eldorado in sales. The Continental Mark III accomplished that in its first year. According to Iacocca, $2,000 of the Mark III's $6,585 price was pure profit, and the car single-handedly transformed the money-losing Lincoln Mercury division into Ford's cash cow. The Mark III wasn't all innovative, but with a 500-pound-feet 7.5-liter V8 under the hood, it was quick. Back in '68, Motor Trend timed the 2.5-ton coupe to 60 in 8.6 seconds. The Mark III marked a turnabout in Lincoln's fortunes. Without it, the brand might not have lived to its 50th anniversary, let alone its 100th. Number 5. 1984 Lincoln Mark VII LSC. Lincoln spent the bulk of the 1970s selling overstuffed, overchromed, and highly profitable land yachts to a loyal base of so-called traditional buyers. So, the Mark VII Luxury Sport Coupe was a daring gamble. It was compact and aerodynamically styled with sparing use of bright work based on the Mustang's Fox platform and electric air suspension, intended to give some sense of credible handling without need to de-cushify the ride too severely. Throughout the model run, Lincoln cautiously upped its belts, raising the 4.9-liter V8's output from 140 horsepower to 200, then 225, and 300 pound-feet of torque with the Mustang GT's high-output engine. The LSC swapped digital gauges for analog and introduced America's first four-wheel anti-lock braking system. By the late 1980s, the LSC had earned a reputation as a credible sports sedan, one that could run with, if not exactly outrun, the Germans. Number 6. 1990 Lincoln Town Car. The 90 Town Car, winner of Motor Trend's 1990 Car of the Year award, was a true mind-bender, illustrating what could happen when modern design and engineering was applied to an old-fashioned style of motoring. Based on the, even then, aging Panther platform, the 1990 Lincoln Town Car was just as big, just as plush, just as soft, and just as silent as any of Lincoln's Malaise-era blimps. And yet, it was modernized with sleek aerodynamic styling, speed-sensitive steering, and a slightly tighter suspension that gave it genuine driver appeal. All that was missing was a modern engine, which came in the form of a 4.6-liter overhead cam V8 introduced for '91. It was the Lincoln that closed the generation gap, a car that appealed to luxury buyers whether or not they had a wallet stuffed with photos of their grandchildren. Number 7. 1993 Lincoln Mark 8. While its predecessor, the Continental Mark VII, took a few years to ease into its role as Lincoln's non-traditional Super Coupe, the Mark 8 arrived in full force, and sans the Continental prefix. Its rounded styling was a jaw-dropper, and its arched, wood-trimmed free dashboard made for an equally modern and impressive interior. Even the power plant was impressive. A thoroughly modern 32-valve DOHC V8 that, we said in our December 1992 issue, moves the car down the road like a fast freight locomotive on velvet rails. Despite its 3,750-pound curb weight, the Mark 8 hustled to 60 in 7.1 seconds and attacked the corners with the zeal of a sports sedan. Just as the 1990 Town Car was a link to Lincoln's past, the Mark 8 looked at a time to be forging a path to the future. Number 8. 1998 Lincoln Navigator. Lincoln single-handedly kicked off the full-size luxury segment, not by luck, but by doing it right. Conceived at a time when Ford still owned Jaguar, the 1998 Navigator's distinct Lincoln-esque looks and leather and wood-slathered interior made it a proper first-class ride, while the SOHC 5.4-liter V8 gave it the thrust to leave the commoners in the dust. Its burly 4x4 truck mechanicals gave it true go-anywhere capability, and a 30-gallon fuel tank ensured no one needs stop on the way to nowhere. For the first time in recent memory, Lincoln outsold Cadillac, which scrabbled to create the Escalade by putting a wreath and crest grille on a GMC Yukon Denali, a move that only underscored the merits of the Navigator. Cadillac soon got it together and introduced a new Escalade that overtook the Navigator in both sales and prestige, and Motor Trend's comparisons tests, but it was the Lincoln Navigator that set the tone for this still hot segment. Number 9. 2000 Lincoln LS. Despite some promising cars in the previous decade, the LS was the last thing anyone expected from Lincoln, an honest-to-goodness rear-wheel drive sports sedan, manual transmission, and all. The LS was based on the same platform that underpinned the Jaguar S-Type, and yet it offered a very American V8, albeit in a very European 3.9-liter size. The styling was rather understated compared to the contemporary and very handsome Town Car, but the interior was properly posh, proving that Lincoln had learned some lessons from Cadillac's failed 1996 Cetera, and the car driving experience was fantastic. While not quite up to the skill levels of its Japanese and European rivals, the LS was genuinely skilled and huge fun to reel around a racetrack, which was the last thing we expected from a Lincoln short of it sprouting flowers from the dashboard. We named the LS as the 2000 Motor Trend Car of the Year and lament to this day that it has never had a proper successor. Number 10. 2020 Lincoln Aviator. Though based on Ford Explorer's bones, the Lincoln Aviator has its own high-lux personality, with an interior that no Euro luxury car owner could complain about. It's also one heck of a straight-line performer, particularly in 494 horsepower, 630 pound-feet, Grand Touring hybrid form. Not bad for a vehicle that can also run emissions-free on pure battery power. Like many of history's best Lincolns, the Aviator can match its skills against serious, high-dollar European luxury marquees, not to mention its domestic rival, and come out with its headlights held high. It's a little early to say for sure, but we think history will remember the Aviator as one of the Lincoln's great cars.